Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sporting Fan Podcast. Today, I'm going to speak about something that has really split golf, and that is the LIV Golf Tour. It's something that fans of golf have pretty strong opinions about. It seems that people are either all for it or totally against it. To give it a bit of background, basically, they get the name LIV from the Roman numerals for 54, which is the length of the tournament. The length of the tournament is 54 holes, and LIV, so LIV, is 54 in the Roman numerals. Basically, where the controversy is that the new tour is backed by the Saudi government, and that has caused backlash for both players that decide to sign with LIV Golf as well as the overall tour. Basically, people are saying it shouldn't go ahead. My opinion is that the tour itself, I think, is good for golf. Just the tour itself, because basically at the moment the PGA and the European tour is basically the only tours. And if the PGA played ball with it, I reckon that could really open up a lot of doors for golf. People will ask, how is it good for golf if some of the best players such as Cam Smith, Mark Leishman, Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson and what have you, like all these other players that have left, they're now playing with the LIV on the LIV tour. How's that good for golf that they are able to basically play on one tour? Well, it would be good for golf if the PGA basically didn't ban all these players from playing on that tour. The reason why it could be good is that they are planning on playing tournaments all over the world, which means that fans that don't live in the US that have traditionally only been able to watch these players on TV are now all of a sudden able to watch them in person if that one of their tournaments comes to their country. For the longest time, all these players from around the world play majority of their golf in the US simply because the US PGA pay the most, and in my opinion it really has negatively affected professional golf, because there would be a lot of quality players who are from around the world that are not from the US. They would want to be professional golfers, but simply because all the players are pooled in one country and they don't necessarily want to move to the US full time or the majority of the year, they basically don't become professional golfers. And that's really negatively affected it. And then people will say, well, what about the European tour? There's a European tour as well. Which, yes, that is an option for European players, but, there's a whole other world outside, North America and Europe. Like, the biggest population in the world is Asia, and really the Asian tour is only relatively small at the moment, and if all the best Asian players are going to either the US or Europe, it negatively, in my opinion, negatively affects it, because there's 4.5 billion people that live in Asia. Like, they really deserve a tournament. And those Asian and Australian, like a lot of the best players in the world are either Asian or Australian. And, a lot of those players would want to play tournaments in their home country. And now with the LIV Golf tour, they can make a living off golf, and they're not away from their families as much. Because with LIV, they play less tournaments. I believe they only need to play 14 tournaments, whereas the USPGA, they had to play 20 tournaments. So, they're at home more than what they would be on the USPGA, and also they have an opportunity to play a tournament in their own country. Furthermore, there's also less strain on their bodies because they're playing one less round of golf. So, instead of playing 72 holes, which is usual tournament, they're playing 54. So there's that one less round per week. The other thing that that LIV has going for it is that it has attracted a lot of players, a lot of the best players, and there is no cut. This basically means that no matter what, even if you have an absolutely rubbish tournament, you will still get paid. That's where a lot of people forget. The players are independent contractors and not employees. That's where individual sports are different to a team sport. In team sports, players are employees. So, for example, if you're a rugby league player, or you're a rugby, you're a rugby union player, unless you're playing for the national team at the moment, your season's coming to an end, or your season's already finished. Here in Australia, so players can't just say, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind going over to Japan or Europe and play, Japanese or European rugby for the next 3 months and pick up $100,000 or $200,000 in the off seasons." Players would need to get permission. If you're in a team sport, you would need to get permission to do that. Whereas if you're in an individual sport like golf, you should have the ability to just go, you know what, I want to play in that tournament, or I want to play if I qualify, I want to play in that tournament, if I want to qualify, I want to play in that tournament. I shouldn't need to get permission to play in that tournament, and and then people forget is you don't on the US tour and the European tour, if you don't make the cut, they're changing it now, but up until this upcoming season, if you don't make the cut, you're not getting paid, and that means no pay, and that means they actually lose money. Due to, they would have to fly in, so they got the airfares, they got accommodation, they got meals, and it's not just them that goes without a paycheck, it's also their caddy. They've got the caddy there as well, so the caddy's got his accommodation, his airfares, and all the other lot as well. Whereas on the LIV tour, they're guaranteed at least something, which means that both the caddy and the player can make something on the weekend. I think that's what people forget, is that these guys are people as well, and they have families. They need to provide for their family. Just because they're golfers doesn't mean they don't have the same responsibilities as everybody else. So that's why the LIV Golf is so attractive to these players, simply because they can say, look, even if I can still pay for whatever. I can cover my costs for bare minimum covering costs. Where, the PGA, you might not be able to do it. The biggest concern that people have, where the controversy is like I said earlier, is that it's backed by the Saudi government. Personally, I agree that it should, that a government, especially the Saudis, shouldn't be backing any sports league, but it's not for the same reasons that everyone is saying. Obviously, the reason why 99% of people are saying that they shouldn't be backing it, and the tournament shouldn't be going ahead, people shouldn't be signing on to play for it, playing this on this tour and what have you, is that the Saudi government, as everyone knows, has a pretty, putting it generously, bad human rights record. They have a record. You know, they have the 9/11, whether they were involved with that or not, who really knows? And then they got the murder of that journalist. Obviously, they've got bad women's rights as well. So they haven't got exactly a good record, but when it comes to these kind of things. But my opinion on that is, like, the people that are really throwing stones at this they don't really look at their own backyard. I know that's going to be a controversy. A lot of people will not like me saying this. A lot of people won't agree with me, but and get quite angry with me saying this. But a lot of countries, especially the Western countries, don't exactly have the best human rights records themselves. Like, I think that this is very much the pot calling the kettle black. Yes, they do it in a more subtle way. Well, not always, but usually they do it in a more subtle way than what the Saudis do. The Saudis just go out and do it, but a lot of the countries, like, for example, here in Australia, we've got the whole Special Forces war crimes where they murdered a lot of civilians in the Middle East over the last 20 years when they were there, where they said that they needed to get a quota amount of kills they got, and it seemed like they didn't really give a damn whether they were enemy combatants or civilians, and a lot of civilians ended up getting killed. Same things goes with the Americans. The Americans killed a lot of people. The British kind of wiped out a lot of indigenous populations. So they don't, like, the ones that are as well as a lot of other European nations that are in the same boat there. So they're not really in a position. I find that they're not really in a position to be lecturing Saudi Arabia when they've killed so many people themselves. So I think that they really, they shouldn't be. If that's the only reason why they're against it, they really should not be against it, really, because a lot of people are fine with their own government doing it. So the reason why I'm against it is that I think that governments should, and this goes for any government. This is not just Saudi Arabia I'm saying this for. I'm saying governments themselves. They really shouldn't be propping up professional sports leagues. Maybe try to get it going. They help them a little bit, but not to the tune that Saudi Arabia is helping this tour. Because quite frankly, I think there's a lot better ways that governments could be spending this money. For example, they could be spending it on education, health, whatever. But let's just say they want to spend, I don't know how much they're actually spending on it, the Saudi government, how much of the LIV is actually backed by them. I'm assuming vast majority of the billions that they've got is actually from the Saudi government. If you're going to spend that kind of money, I believe that it should go more into vast majority of that should be going towards more grassroots and amateur clubs to help them get people involved with sport, as well as keeping them involved so they stay fit and what have you. That's where I think that would be a better use of their money. Because yes, sure that there's only going to be 0.1% of those people that are going to eventually become a professional athlete, and then there's an even smaller percentage of that's actually going to be the superstars of the sport. But personally, I think that, getting people involved and keeping them involved is a much more important thing. And that's where, and yes, and then people, I understand the other side of the argument saying that, you need to have, role models in the sport, and if they don't see anyone, playing the sport, then they've got nothing to aspire to. Why would they want to play that sport? But you need to get them playing first. Like, you've got no one bloody playing, then they're going to kind of aspire. Like, for example, how many Saudi Arabian players do you see in any sport that's at the top? Not bloody many. Like, and that includes soccer, rugby, tennis, golf. Like, you go through the sports, all the big sports. How many players do you say, he's from Saudi Arabia? The only players that you might say that he or she was born in Saudi Arabia, chances are they would have left Saudi Arabia, and got a lot of their training in a foreign nation. So I think that Saudi Arabia should really be pushing their citizens into sport to try to get... And again, I know that they're in a freaking desert. They're in the Middle East where it's freaking 50 degrees on a bloody... on a cool day it's probably like 30 degrees. And, in the hot days it's probably like 50 odd degrees, 45, 50. But maybe build facilities that, you can get these people to... that is more conducive to get people to play. Like, that's where I think they should be getting, putting their money into, rather than what they're currently doing, because, you want... Because the other thing is that people don't get, like, if you've got an active society, that means that, they're fitter, they're healthier, and then that flows onto the healthcare and what have you. So, that's where I think they should be really doing it, and that's why I'm against them backing them to this extent. They really should be looking at the long term, putting it into the grassroots and trying to get the long-term growth into professional athletes rather than putting all the money at the top, I think. And I know I'm digressing here, but that's what the problem that Rugby Australia has had for the last 25 years, right? They've basically, since the game went professional, they put all the money at the top and think, the grassroots will look after themselves. And, well, quite frankly, look where the mess that Rugby Australia is in at the moment. They are in a mess. So that's a good example of what I'm just saying. Like, if you neglect your bottom, eventually you're not going to have a top, or your top's going to be trash. So that's where I think the Saudi should be really should be pushing this. And to be, the other side of this is obvious. Well, on the professional side, the other side of this is obviously the other tours. This is on the business side that I'm talking about. The other side of this, you got the European and the US PGAs. So the US and the European tour, the US and European tours. They've handled this so poorly, in my opinion. They've just gone, how can we handle this they've just looked at it and go, what's the worst way to handle this? I know, that's basically what they've done. Like, those are the bit worst things. Let's ban all the players. Let's say that we're going to sue them. Let's threaten them with, all this stuff. It's just like, you guys are fucking idiots. Honestly, it's like, excuse my language, but that is so beyond stupid. But the thing is, majority of these players probably want to stay on the either the European or the US tour, but the reason why they've handed their card in, like they don't want to play, they're not playing on it anymore, is because of what I just said. They're, the PGA is threatening to sue them and drag them through the mud and all this, and so the players are just going, screw you, like, go to hell. We're not gonna go through this. We're not going to be sued over this. So they've just handed in their card. I understand that the PGA want to discourage players from going to LIV because they want to have all the best players for on their own tour. But like I said earlier, the PGA needs to realise that the players are independent contractors and not employees. They basically, they don't get a regular paycheck. They don't get, like the team sports. They don't get the $2,000, $5,000, $100,000, whatever it is, dollars a week. That the team sports, they need to play, and if they go, they have another tour that goes, I'm going to guarantee you this money. Well, they're going to play in that, and they're going, and obviously a lot of these players still want to play on the PGA Tour because they want to play in the plays. They want to play in the majors. They want to play in the big tournaments. Whereas LIV at the moment, I'm not sure that they can. And so the PGA's just gone, we don't want you. They've pissed off these players, and now they've lost a lot of their best players. Like I mentioned the players earlier, some of the players like Leishman and Mickelson, Cam Smith, but they've also lost blokes like Bryson DeChambeau, and all these other blokes. They're all like, I don't think Leishman's won a major, but all these other blokes are, multi-time major winners, and the PGA's losing them. And that's going to cost them money in sponsorship because the people we want to watch the best players, and a lot of the best players are leaving. And then the PGA has all of a sudden poured $160 million out to pay the players more in prize money for the year. And then a lot of people God only knows where they pulled this money out from, but obviously that's $160 million a year that they're able to pull out from somewhere, and that's probably going to be $160 million per year. And people are going to say, well, they just signed a new TV rights, and they signed this, and they signed that, and they signed the other thing. But that's not going to be $160 million more than what it was previously. Because that $160 million, that's not the whole pool for the year. That's $160 million on top of what it already was. So that's $160 million that they managed to pull from somewhere, the PGA. So a lot of the players are saying, well, why weren't we getting paid that to begin with? And I reckon that's a bloody good argument. It's not so... Yes, you need to have the PGA needs to have money in the bank, and they need to have the administrators there. They more than likely need to pay the I'm assuming they would have to pay the golf courses as well on that. But where have they pulled this an extra $160 million from? Is that $160 million that they were just keeping each year? I think that's and this is an argument that, a lot of other sports, for example, State of Origin, that's why the State of Origin players were getting paid so much more than what they were in the past, because they were getting paid basically nothing in State of Origin previously. And then all of a sudden the players were the NRL was making millions from this, and they're saying, well, you're making millions of dollars from us, and in match to and the tickets from the game, TV rights, sponsorship, sponsorship of the game, you're making millions of dollars from this, and we're getting diddly squat from it. Like, we deserve to get paid more. And then they basically forced the NRL to pay them more. So that's where, the golfers are basically, and now got a better deal. And so that's obviously hasn't gone down well with the players. That, they're obviously a hell of a lot happier now that they are getting the $160 million more. But a lot of the players are saying, we should have been getting that to begin with. If you're pulling that now, you should have been able to pull that previously. So, that's annoyed a lot of players that they, and that's the reason why a lot of players went to LIV, because, simply because the LIV was able to pay them all this money, and there's no cut, so that means they're going to get a paycheck. So they're like, well, why wouldn't I go and play LIV? Like, yes, I'm not going to be able to win a major. I'm not, chances are, unless I get some kind of exemption, I'm not going to win a major. I'm not going to win this. I'm not going to win that. But the thing is, like, I want to set up my family. And, and that's where the players, a lot of the players went. And, they're saying that even if you don't make the cut now, you're going to get paid a minimum of $5,000. I believe it's $5,000, and I'm not sure where that's ended up, whether they actually approve that or not. But that's obviously angered. A lot of players are saying, well, they should have got that. They should have got that. So they should have always had that. So they could have at bare minimum paid their accommodation or whatever. That's where quite a bit of anger has come from, towards the PGA itself. That a lot of people are saying we should have got to summarize what I've just said, should have always got paid whether we whether we played we made the cut or not, simply because you're making money off. I've come to work. You're making money off me through TV rights, so I should get paid. And I'm not getting paid, so now they are. And they managed to pull $160 million out of someone. So that's where a lot of the anger towards the PGA from the players has come from. And I agree with them. If the PGA wants to exploit them, like make money of them, exploit is probably not the right word. If the players, if you want to make money of me, I should get at least some kind of compensation from that. And I agree with them. And obviously the last aspect of this is obviously, the players, which I've spoken about a lot in this. The players the players are the ones that make the tour. No players, no money. Everyone loses their job. All the administrators, all that. There wouldn't be, a lot of people would lose their job. And the players are basically saying we want to set up our families, which, that's what people forget. Everyone, makes them out to be some cartoon character, some character on TV. They're not characters. They're real life people. This is not some soap opera. And the players are saying, well, you're saying that we're accepting blood money, right? And then the players are turning around and like, okay, how many of you people use FedEx? Okay, FedEx has ties to Saudi Arabia. So, and a lot of people go, well, we don't use FedEx. Well, if you send stuff in the post, a lot of people go, oh, Australia's post, for example, here in Australia, Australia Post sends it. Not always. Like, for example, I was in the post office just the other day. Funnily enough, where I was for work, where I was delivering something for work, and I just happened to see that FedEx was picking up some of the deliveries from the post office, and then they were and then I don't know what, obviously, because it wasn't my package. I didn't know what the package was. I don't know where it was going. I don't know what was being delivered. But the fact of the matter is, FedEx was delivering that bloody package. So just because you might send it via Australia Post or equivalent of in your country, doesn't mean it doesn't go through FedEx. And a lot of people are like, well, what's FedEx got to do with it? Well, FedEx is one of the biggest sponsors of the USPGA, and I think they had the tournaments called the FedEx Cup. So that's where and like I said, they've got ties to this. They've got contracts in Saudi Arabia. So, just because you don't have you don't directly involved with the Saudi Arabia, that a lot of the sponsors don't directly have things in Saudi Arabia. They're still getting contracts, sir. A lot of their sponsors have contracts. I don't know, but I'm assuming they would probably have a TV rights in Saudi Arabia. That they would have something in Saudi Arabia. So, and also, everyone catches a bus. They've been in a car. They get in a plane. They've been on. Some people been on a cruise. Like, everyone's used some kind of transport that uses petrol. Who's one of the biggest suppliers of petrol in the world? Saudi Arabia. So, and where does that money go to? It goes to the ruling class there, the royal family. So, it goes to the government. So really, in a roundabout way, you might not directly be contributing to the Saudi government, but chances are you are indirectly doing it. So, saying to these players, oh, you're accepting blood money, they should be ashamed of themselves. Really, I think it's a bit unfair on the players, because in a roundabout way, you're contributing to that. And also, you have to realize that these people, like I was just saying, these people they've got families, They're doing what they think is best for their family. They've got to provide for their family. They're away, a good part of the year. And, they're one injury away from their whole career being over. Or one illness from being, their whole career being over. And, or potentially they might not be able to play for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, And if they're out for that long, they're probably not going to be able to come back, or not to the extent that they were. And then, so if being able to get these 30, 50, 100, 150, or I think in Phil Mickelson's case, I think it was $250 million. I think it was $160 million US. That sets them up for life. It sets the kids up for life. And potentially even their grandkids for life. So if they do get that, that severe, decapitating wasn't the right word I was looking for. Crippling's the right word. Crippling illness or injury, they're able to pay for that, whether it be themselves that are paying for, whether it's themselves that have got it, or whether it's the family member. they're able to pay that, and I know people will go, well, these blokes are getting well paid anyway. You know, these guys are making millions of dollars a year. But, you know, some of these blokes, they're like, obviously Cam Smith's only at the start of his career, but, you know, Mickelson's at the end of towards the end of his career. Do you think he's going to be earning $250 million Australian, $160 million US on the PGA Tour? No, he's not. And then he actually gets paid the whatever he earns from these winnings as well on top of that. And then, like, you know, just having that money in the bank where they invest it, where, you know, yes, these guys are well paid, and people are going, it's not the same as, you know, the average person going from a $100,000 job to a $200,000 job. These guys are going from, you know, and these guys are earning millions of dollars a year, so it's not like the same. But it's just like I said, they want to have that security, that they want to have that rainy day fund, where if they end up getting sick, or someone in the family is sick, they're able to pay for it. They want that. And, you know, that's where I think it's pretty unfair to just bash these blokes saying you guys are greedy, because I don't believe they are. They're doing, like, yes, I know that they're getting paid a shitload more than what they were. And there is a certain amount of greed in it, but really, like, you have to realize, like, you're not in their position. If someone comes along and says, I'm going to set you up for life, and they're actually legitimate, like, then it's not a scam. Someone says, I can set you up for life, your kids are going to be set up for life, it's kind of hard to say no. And, you know, put yourself in that position. Think, this person's going to give me $100 million. Think of, like, you know, people are going to go, oh, you know, how often do you hear people go, oh, if I win lotto, I'm going to retire? If I won $20 million, no, times that by 5, times that by 7, times that by 10. You know, that $20 million. They can retire now. And obviously they can't, because they signed the contract, they have to play. But, you know, if they can retire now, like, they can basically be playing for fun. Anything past what they've got now is just a bonus, right? So yes, obviously they're going to, you know, they've still got a competitive edge where they want to win. But, you know, they want that money. They're set. They can retire at any time. Mickelson can retire at any. Like, I don't know how long these contracts last for, but he can retire now. Whereas, you know, he can retire with a lot of money, and he can basically play for enjoyment rather than play for, like, the pressure's basically off them now. And yeah, you know, doing something what you love, because that's where for example, going back again to a lot other sports, like, you know, when you're playing something, like Andrew Johns often says in the rugby league, NRL, says, oh, these guys, you can see that they're playing for a job. They're not enjoying themselves. And I know a guy that played at my rugby club, and he said that, you know, he's fell in love with the rugby again now that he's, you know, playing for fun rather than playing professionally. And yeah, so, like, as much as they're still playing professionally, they are more playing for fun rather than playing for the because I have to. And yeah, so that's what my opinion on LIV is. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on it. leave a comment and to say what you think. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with what I've said, or they might only agree with part of what I said. They won't agree with all of what I've said. So I'm interested to hear what you think. Leave a comment, and yeah, comment, like, share, and yeah, until next time, have a good one.